Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophets Speak. Today we continue our study of Sefer Mishlei, the book of Proverbs. We are about to study chapter 27. We are going to study the first half of chapter 27 together today. Al tishalel biyom machar ki lo te'da ma yeled yom. Do not boast or brag or have confidence in what's going to happen tomorrow, how everything's going to be great tomorrow, because you don't even know what's going to happen today. In other words, it's kind of like the saying, don't count your chickens before they hatch. People often will tell us everything about how great it's going to be, because I'm going to this and I'm going to that and I'm going to be successful, I'm going to all this stuff. How could you be so confident that tomorrow is going to be so great if you can't even be confident, and we all know that today may not be so great? So don't walk around with the assumption that everything is going to be perfect tomorrow. Take care of your needs now. Verse 2, Yehalel chazar v'lo ficha nachri v'al sifasecha. Let other people praise you, but don't be the one who walks around extolling your own greatness and virtues. It's okay sometimes to feel proud if somebody compliments you and tells you something nice. That's fine. But you don't be the one that walks around talking about how great you are. Let a stranger be the one who says those things, and let it not come from your lips. Verse 11, Koved eben v'netel hachol. It is true that moving a stone or a rock is very heavy, and sand is extremely hard to pick up and take and carry from place to place. However, it is possible to move it. It just has it's a lot of hard work. It's tough, but you can do it. But vikas evil, the anger of a fool, when people get angry at things for no good reason, they just get mad. When a fool gets mad, kaved mishneim, it's heavier than both, because there is no hard work that you can do in order to somehow change the outcome, in order to somehow calm him down. It's one thing if someone's angry for an understandable reason, you can find out what it is, you can talk to him or her and work things out. But a kas evil is heavier than a heavy rock. There's no way it can be moved, no matter how much effort you expend in it. Verse 4, achziriyut chema v'shetef af. Verse 4 is, of course, related to the previous verse, right? Anger and the fury, or the overflowing fury and anger is very cruel, can be extremely cruel. In other words, I just told you that anger is terrible, but there's something even worse than that. Umiya amod lifnei kino, who can even stand before jealousy? Jealousy is even worse. If we look at the Metzudos and the Ralbag, they both explain something that's just so true, and we know this to be true. When someone who is angry, he wishes ill upon the person that he's angry at, which is bad. It's bad enough, as we said. It's achzerios, it's cruel, it's bad. But when someone is jealous of another person, it's worse, because then he doesn't even care about doing something that will harm himself. He'll do anything to make the other person suffer, even if it's not in his own best interest. Anger leads you to do bad things to others, but you're still looking out for your own good. You want to do something that's good for you, bad for him. But jealousy is so overwhelming that it leads you to do things and act in ways that are bad for your own self-interests, as long as you can hurt your friend. You'll take your friend down even if you go down with him. That's why kinna is even worse than anger, even worse than the anger of a fool. Verse 5, Tova tochachas megula me'ahava mesuteres. I'm going to go with the Ralbag's explanation here, which is really beautiful. It's better to criticize someone in public and revealed, in other words, for real, to speak to you. If you love someone, it is much better to swallow the difficult pill of criticizing them, of course, when it is constructive criticism meant from the heart, than to love, but love secretly, and not give the rebuke when it's necessary, not criticize. We know what happens in a relationship, even when there is love, but when one refuses to Speak up when the person, the subject of that love, it does something wrong or could improve, and you keep it to yourself, it just gets worse and worse, and eventually the love ruptures. But it's much better to go ahead and criticize when it's appropriate than to keep it to yourself when such a relationship is involved. Verse 6, Ne'emonim pitz'ei ohev. This is related to verse 5. It's kind of a corollary to it. Ne'emonim pitz'ei ohev. Why is this? Because the wounds that are inflicted by someone who loves, right, someone who truly is giving constructive criticism, right, they are much more, those wounds are much more trustworthy. They're much more proper and appropriate, right? Because even though it hurts when you tell the person you love that there's something about them or something that they did that was not wrong. It hurts. It's tough. But those are ne'emonim, those are trustworthy, those are proper. But v'na'taros neshiko sone. But the kisses of someone who hates, who pretends on the outside to love, but truly inside hates, those are na'taros, which is a little hard to translate, but one way of saying would be inappropriate, inopportune, right? Those are kisses. They're false kisses, right? So it's better if you love someone to criticize when appropriate than to hold it back. And eventually, if you did hold it back, eventually you'll be pretending to love, and the actual love will be gone. This is just a very true statement about relationships in general. Verse 7, nefesh sevei tovus nofes. There are things that we know as seem to be inherently good. So, for example, a honeycomb is delicious. It's tasty. It's sweet. Everyone loves honey, right? But if you're not hungry and you have a full belly, you're not interested even in eating the most delicious food, right? In other words, we disdain or we look down upon or we're disgusted by things that are really good because we're satisfied. V'nefesh re'eva. But when we're hungry, kol marmatok, even bitter things taste sweet to us. And it's all relative. We all go through life, things that are inherently seem to be good, but when we're in a certain position in life, it may not look good to us. And the same thing with when we're hungry, anything looks good. I sometimes joke with myself, the worst time in the world to go shopping for groceries is when you're hungry, because everything looks good and you end up buying way more than you need. Verse 8, Kitzipar nodedes min kina kein ish noded mimkomo. A person should always remember his place, where he grew up, where he or she is comfortable, the place where we are accustomed to living, right? Because when we wander away, we're like a bird away from our nest. This is an important lesson. It's a simple lesson. Wandering away from our support system, and we're going to see this in the next few verses with the relationship. What this means by kina. Of course, it means if you grew up in a hometown, you're comfortable in your hometown, but it means more than that. It means the base of your security in life, your family, the ones that you're close with. Leaving them, rejecting them, is like a bird leaving her nest. Shemenu ketoris yisamachlev. This is verse 9. Oil and incense make one happy. It makes the heart happy. Everyone loves, the nice feeling of a nice moisturizer and oil on the skin. Ketores or oil to use for frying food, or ketores, incense. It smells nice. It makes one happy. Umesek re'eu, and the sweetness of a friend, me'atzas nafesh, who gives advice that comes from the soul, advice that is meant well, advice that is meant it comes from a true desire to help. That kind of advice is mesek, is sweet. It's sweet like oil, sweet like incense. Don't leave your friend and the friends of your family, right? In other words, don't abandon them. That's your support system. This is what we were referring to when we talked about the bird from the nest, right? We talked about in the verse, right, the one we just read, the special sweetness of a friend who is willing and desires to give advice when it's meant to be helpful, advice from atzas nefesh, advice from the heart. And Rea Avicha, those are going to come from your old friends, the ones that you grew up with, the ones who you know. Don't abandon them. Don't run away and think you can rebuild everything. Ubeis achicha al tavo b'yomedecha, right? But don't just go running to the house of your brother when you're having trouble, right? Tov shachein karov me'ach rachok, because it is better to go to your neighbor who is close to you, close in other words in your heart, someone who's friendly with you, than running to your brother who doesn't know you, who doesn't really love you as much. In other words, sure, family is great, but family that you know, that you trust, that you get along with, and a friend that you trust and get along with is better than family that you don't. Verse 11, Chacham beni v'samach libi. This one is going back to the language we had earlier in the book of the sage speaking to his student, to his son. And he's telling his student, please get wise, listen to these things that I'm teaching you, and then I will be happy. Why will I be happy if you get wise? Because it'll show that all my efforts that I put into you were not in vain. Because then I have what to answer those who are making fun of me. When people go out and give a speech and say and try to say something that's going to change things about society, change things around them, one of the first things cynics tell you is, why are you bothering talking to people? Nobody's going to listen. You're not going to change anything. You're not going to do anything. So here we have the teacher saying those that are listening, listen, learn these lessons. So that when people make fun of me and say, don't bother talking, don't bother teaching this wisdom, don't bother writing this book of Proverbs, because nobody's going to listen anyway, nobody's going to change. He's begging the people, no, please listen, so that I can tell everyone it was worth it. Arum ra'a nistar. Arum means a smart person, a person who sees the future, who looks into and analyzes something and thinks about what could happen. He sees the evil that's coming. He sees the possible downfalls. He plans a mission knowing what the dangers are, what the risks are. Nistar, so he can hide. He can hide from them. He can take measures in order to stay away from those dangers. Pisayim, but fools, avru nashu, they just pass. They just do. They just decide what they do, and nashu, and in the end, they get punished for it. They end up getting hit by those things which they didn't plan for. Again, when it comes to planning, one of the things that's so important when it comes to planning is thinking about when you are an arev, when you take responsibility to back up someone else. The classic example, of course, is when someone borrows money and asks you to co-sign, right? You to be an arev, to be a co-signer, to be a guarantor on a loan. Right, this is a very dangerous thing, which in Mishlei, Proverbs has warned us against it many times. You have to be very, very careful, right? Because you have to think, what could happen? What could happen is you could end up in deep trouble. And here it is criticizing those that act as guarantors unwisely. And it is saying, go ahead and take his garment, because he is the one who decided to be a guarantor for a friend. He jumped in and took responsibility for things that he should never have taken responsibility for. He was one of those fools that didn't look and see, well, what bad could happen? Well, I'll show you what bad could happen, right? So go ahead and take his cloak. Uva'ad nachriyan, for someone that went after a foreign woman, right, which has been kind of a euphemism this time for going in places where he shouldn't have gone, where you don't belong, right? And such a person takes those kinds of risks. Chavlehu, you can you can punish him or take him himself, not just his beged, not just his cloak, but him himself, because he went and took that terrible risk upon himself. I'm going to do one more verse and end the first half of this chapter. Mivarech re'ehu b'kol gadol. When somebody gets up and he blesses his friend in a great loud voice, he gives such huge, over-the-top, exaggerated exaggerated speeches about how wonderful you are, about Boker Hashkem, early in the morning. In other words, he's standing early in the morning and giving a loud speech about how wonderful and how great this guy is. It's like if you ever went to a political rally and someone talks about a politician and just goes on and on and on about how great he is, saying things that are clearly way over the top. Kilala techashev lo. It would be considered by those that are listening. People will realize that this guy is, in the end, he's doing more harm than good. He's really cursing him, not blessing him. And we've all seen such compliments where the compliments are so over the top when everyone says, "What, that guy? He's not so great. I know when he did this. I saw him do that." And in the end, you're hurting him rather than helping him. I'm going to end here, 27a. Thank you so much for studying the first half of this chapter together. I look forward to studying the rest of this chapter and, of course, the rest of the book of Proverbs. Please feel free to comment on any of the public forums. Feel free to send me an email directly if you have something to say privately. That would be at weinrebsaul, that is WEINREBSAUL @gmail.com. Wishing you all a wonderful, wonderful day.